Before we begin, this isn't just a video, it's a place to come back to yourself. If your soul's been aching for silence, for truth, you're in the right place. So take a breath, and if you feel it, subscribe. Let's talk about who you really are before you fall asleep. You don't really know who you are. Not completely, not beneath all the words and expectations. You wake up each day and step into a name, into a history you didn't write, into a face you didn't choose, and you walk like it's yours, as if you built it with your own hands. But did you? When was the last time you met yourself without mirrors, without likes, without job titles, without someone calling your name? You say, "I am me." But what does that mean? Is you the voice speaking in your head, or the one listening? Are you the thoughts that float by, or the silence that receives them? And if you were born in a different time, a different body, to different parents, would you still be you, or would you be a stranger to this version of yourself? The truth is, you were born into a costume, a set of traits and beliefs handed down to you before you could speak. Be a good boy, be polite, be strong, be quiet, be normal. So you learned to perform, you became a mask, one layer, then another, until one day you forgot who was underneath. But the soul doesn't forget. It waits. In stillness, in sadness, in the way your chest tightens when you're alone, in the feeling that something about your life doesn't quite fit, like you're playing a character who doesn't know the end of the story. And maybe that's why sleep feels sacred, because every night the mask slips, and something older takes your place, something wordless, ancient, unfinished. So let me ask you, if I stripped away everything you think you are, your name, your language, your country, your trauma, your fears, your victories, your regrets, what would be left? Would you still exist, or would you vanish with the noise? It's a question you've buried beneath routines. But tonight, before you fall asleep, I'm going to dig it back up, not to scare you, but to free you, because there is something, someone underneath it all, something real. And you've been too busy pretending to be someone else to hear it whisper. Let me remind you, we're not going to dive yet, not too fast. You're not ready to see the whole truth, not in the first breath. But I need you to do one thing right now. Breathe. And let the silence settle. Feel how the world begins to dissolve when you stop trying to hold it up. No roles, no answers, just this. You in the quiet. That's where the truth begins. You've never really been just one person, and deep down, you know that. You've changed too many times in silence to still pretend you're a single thing. You've felt the shift, subtle, unspoken, when a piece of you dies and another quietly rises. Not with fire, not with celebration, but with stillness, with resignation, with something that feels like growing older in one breath. There's the you that you show to the world, the curated one, the one that knows the lines, knows the script, knows how to nod, how to say "I'm fine," even when you're not. There's the you that only exists in solitude, the one that cries without sound, the one that breaks over memories that no longer belong to you, the one that asks, "Is this all there is?" and never gets an answer. And then there's the you that no one has ever met, not even you. A version so buried, so untouched by rules or roles that it only breathes when you dream or when you bleed. That version isn't shaped by others. It isn't designed for survival. It isn't beautiful or broken. It just is. But we run from that version, don't we? Because it's easier to wear 1,000 masks than to face the truth of who we've always been beneath them. We become identities. We collect them like clothing, the strong one, the funny one, the intelligent one, the cold one, the loyal one, the distant one. And we wear them long enough to forget they were ever costumes. But then it happens, slowly, painfully. A moment breaks the illusion, a loss, a betrayal, a dream that dies, and suddenly the mirror cracks. You don't recognize the eyes staring back. They're too tired, too old, too honest. And for a brief moment you wonder, if I'm not who I was, then who am I now? But the world doesn't wait for that answer. It tells you, move on, get up, perform, smile, work, respond, scroll, consume, pretend, and so you do. You keep becoming someone else, again, and again, and again. But maybe that's not failure. Maybe your constant changing isn't evidence of confusion. Maybe it's proof that you're still alive. Maybe the real tragedy isn't that you've changed, but that you've never paused long enough to meet the one who's always been watching. Because someone's been watching, through all your mistakes, through all your rebirths, through every tear you never let fall. There's been someone silently sitting at the center of your being, untouched by your names, your timelines, your contradictions. Call it the soul, call it God, call it awareness, call it you, but it's there. And if you close your eyes now, not in sleep but in surrender, you might feel it again. That ancient rhythm, that quiet pulse, that soft reminder that you are more than what this world can explain. So let me ask again. If we removed every name, every memory, every fear, every scar, every language, every lie, what would be left? Would you still be you, or would you be something better? Would you be free, or would the silence scare you so much you'd beg for your old prison back? No answers tonight, just space. We're not here to solve the mystery. We're here to sit inside of it before sleep comes to take the weight off your chest. Because in the quiet between versions, something sacred waits, and it's been waiting for you for a very, very long time. You spent your entire life building a story, not a lie, a survival, one shaped by memory, or what you think is memory. But memory is not a mirror. It's a window, fogged by time and fear, cleaned selectively by emotion, and cracked by repetition. You've told yourself the same version of the past so many times, you've stopped questioning who authored it. But tonight, I want you to pause, because there's a memory inside you that doesn't fully belong to you. But it shaped you anyway. Maybe it was a sentence someone said to you at the wrong moment. Maybe it was silence when you needed a voice. Maybe it was the way someone looked at you, like you were too much or not enough, and your soul bent under that gaze and never stood straight again. You internalized things that weren't yours to carry. You adopted guilt that never belonged to you. You created habits of self-erasure because it was safer to disappear than to disappoint. And little by little, you abandoned parts of yourself, not because you were weak, but because the world made you choose between being yourself and being accepted. And acceptance always wins when you're young, when love feels like oxygen, when rejection feels like death. So you learn the trick. Smile, shrink, survive. You tell yourself, I'm fine. You forget, you move on. But forgetting is never clean. It leaves stains, not on your brain, but in your nervous system. You feel it when someone raises their voice, when someone pauses too long before answering, when someone looks at you like they're measuring your worth. You don't remember why you flinch, only that you always have. That's what buried memory feels like. Reflexes without explanation, fear without origin, sadness that doesn't make sense. And that sadness, that's your real self knocking on the walls of your consciousness. You think healing means feeling better. Sometimes, healing means feeling what you avoided. So let's go deeper, not into the past, but into the weight of the past that you still carry in the present. You might be afraid of what you'll find, but nothing you uncover is more dangerous than continuing to live half asleep. Because when you forget, the forgotten parts of you start screaming in silence. They turn into patterns, into addictions, into relationships that repeat the same wounds with different names, and you call it fate. You call it bad luck, but it's just memory disguised as the present. So ask yourself, what parts of you were never grieved? The innocence that was mocked, the honesty that was punished, the creativity that was shamed, the sensitivity that was labeled weakness. You buried them. You became what the world needed you to be. But somewhere deep inside, they're still alive, starving for acknowledgement, not to be fixed, not to be rewritten, just to be seen. You don't have to fix everything tonight. You don't even have to remember everything. You just have to stop pretending it didn't shape you, because who you really are is not just who you've become, but who you've silenced to become it. And maybe the voice that's been growing inside you lately, that discomfort, that ache, that quiet discontent, it isn't confusion. It's a soul waking up. So before you fall asleep tonight, sit with this question. What if the parts of you you've been trying to escape are the parts that were most honest? And what if remembering them isn't regression, but resurrection? Not for the world, not for attention, not for validation, just for you. Because you deserve to return to yourself before the world renamed you. What if I told you that everything you think you are is about to fall apart? Not because you're broken, but because the version of you that you've been clinging to was never built to hold truth. It was built to function, to cope, to protect, but not to awaken. And now, you're here, at the edge of sleep, And something inside you is tired of pretending. You've been repeating yourself like a script. I'm this, I'm not that, I'm the kind of person who... But all those phrases, they're not anchors, they're cages. Because the more you define yourself, the less room there is to become. You were never meant to be a fixed shape. You're not a resume, not a label, not a list of traits. You're not introvert or extrovert. You're not strong or weak. You're not even your personality. That's just the mask that got rewarded the most. You are a river, fluid, ancient, evolving. But you've been trying to hold your soul like it's made of stone. That's why you feel stuck. That's why you can't breathe fully when no one's around. That's why the mirror doesn't always recognize you. Because deep down, you know the truth. The you you've been carrying is outdated. It was built for survival. It was designed to be loved. It was shaped by what others needed, not by who you were when you arrived on this earth. So now it's cracking. You're outgrowing the version of yourself that made sense to everyone but you. And that collapse, it's not failure, it's freedom. But freedom doesn't always feel like peace. Sometimes it feels like loss of identity, loss of certainty, loss of control. And so you resist, you cling, you bargain with yourself. Maybe I don't need to change, maybe I can just adjust a little bit, maybe I can keep being who I was and still evolve. But that's not how it works. The soul doesn't negotiate, it waits. And when you're ready, it burns. Because what you're becoming can't live in the same skin that kept you safe. And here's the scariest part. You won't recognize yourself on the other side of this. You'll lose preferences. You'll lose opinions. You'll lose the desire to prove anything. You'll forget why you ever needed to be liked. Not because you're numb, but because you've returned to something older than personality. Something still. Something observing. Something that has always been there beneath the noise of your becoming. Call it consciousness. Call it presence. Call it the image of God inside you, untouched by ego. Whatever name you give it, you'll feel it when the collapse is complete. Not as fire, not as pain, but as clarity, as silence, as the ability to sit alone in a room with yourself and not feel like you're missing something. And yes, it's terrifying to lose you, to let it fall, to stop identifying with the stories you've told yourself every day of your life. But what if I told you, you're not losing anything real? You're just shedding what was borrowed. You're not becoming someone new. You're remembering who you were before the world convinced you to forget. And you don't have to finish that journey tonight. You don't have to break all the way open. But here now, before you fall asleep, you can let a crack form in the shell. Just enough light to get in, just enough silence to hear something deeper whispering. Something that says, you were never the voice in your head. You were never the image in the mirror. You were never what they said, what you feared, or what you achieved. You were the awareness behind it all. Watching, waiting, enduring, and now returning. You've been peeling it all away. The names, the identities, the voices that aren't yours, the memories that lied to you, the masks that kept you safe but suffocated your breath. Now there's nothing left to remove. And here you are, naked in the most terrifying sense of the word. No identity, no label, no idea of who you're supposed to be tomorrow. Just this presence, this stillness. But instead of relief, you feel an ache. An ache you can't describe, because it's not pain. It's emptiness, the absence of pretending, the absence of performance, the absence of narrative. And for a moment, you panic. Because the silence inside you feels too wide, too unfamiliar, too infinite. You reach for something, anything, to hold on to, but there's nothing left. This is what ego death feels like. Not fireworks, not visions, just the soft, disorienting realization that you are not who you thought you were. And still, you are here. Still breathing. Still aware. So, who is aware? Who's behind your eyes right now? Who's witnessing the unraveling? Who's reading these words and recognizing something ancient in them? If you are not your name, if you are not your thoughts, if you are not your emotions, if you are not your memory, if you are not your story, then what are you? Look carefully. You are not the storm. You are the space the storm moves through. You are not the flame. You are the warmth it leaves behind. You are not the character. You are the screen on which the story plays. You are not the identity. You are the silence underneath every identity that has ever existed. And maybe this is what no one ever told you, that you don't need to become anything. You only need to remember what you've always been. Still, vast, unshakable, holy. Not because you're perfect, but because you're real. And what's real doesn't need to be proven, only witnessed. You are not what the world reflects back to you. You are not the result of others' approval. You are the observer, the unmovable center behind all motion, the soul before the story, the breath before the thought, the light before the face. And if this scares you, it means you're standing on the threshold of truth, because everything the ego fears is a doorway, and this is yours. So step through it, fall into the nameless, dissolve into the stillness, let everything go, not as surrender, but as return. You are not falling asleep. You are waking up from the illusion of who you thought you were. And yes, the world will try to pull you back tomorrow, with roles, with noise, with names. But tonight, you remember, you are none of that. You are not what they expect. You are not what they see. You are not even what you feel. You are what remains when there is nothing left to strip away. And that is not emptiness. That is freedom. So breathe. Don't rush to fill the silence. Let it hold you. Don't rush to define this moment. Let it change you. Don't rush to be you again. Let the truth echo a little longer. You are here. That is enough. You are here. That is sacred. You are here. And no one can take that from you. So rest, not as escape, but as reunion. Sleep, not to forget, but to remember what cannot be forgotten. You were never lost. You were never broken. You were only buried beneath everything they taught you to be. But now you are free. Sleep well, if you can.